All right, and welcome to our webinar, how to read a credit report and screen like a pro. My name is MacKenzie Wilson. I'm one of the directors here at SingleKey. We'll get going now, but we still have people joining on the fly, which is totally fine. This webinar will be recorded. Oh, sorry, I'm a little bit rusty here. This webinar will be recorded, so you have the opportunity to watch the replay as well. It'll be shared in a follow-up email. Okay, so we'll quickly just go through what we'll cover in this webinar for the next 30 minutes. A quick introduction about SingleKey, our products and services, and then we'll go through some tenant screen tips as well as a report and kind of the mindset and how to approach the process. And what we'll do with your questions, we have a busy chat going on, so thanks for everyone sharing where you're from, by the way. So we've got folks from Ontario, Alberta, BC, perfect. Okay. And what we'll do is if you ask a question, we'll acknowledge it with a hand wave emoji. And then as we make sure we answer your questions, we'll give you guys the thumbs up. Perfect. So for the people that haven't heard about SingleKey before, thank you for taking the time to join our webinar. Our whole big purpose here at SingleKey is focusing on risk management along the tenant screening process and really anything around being a landlord or rental property owner here in Canada. We've got three main services that we offer. Oh, and I'll come to those next. We just crossed over 100,000 landlords on our platform back in September. A pretty exciting milestone. We're probably coming up to 500,000 tenants in our database as well. And we have really three main core services that we offer for everyone. Our biggest one, and probably the most of the reason why most of you guys are here, is our tenant screen report. It's really an online application plus a very comprehensive report. Compared to our competitors in the industry, we're the most comprehensive, meaning that on average, our typical report's between 15 to 20 pages, including a full credit score, the same information that you'd have, that a bank would have before they decide to lend out on a mortgage. So we're basically arming you with the same tools to find and build that trust very quickly, find that right tenant, and build that trust to give them complete access before they give them complete access to or control of your rental property. Uh, is what we're trying to do. Sorry, if you apologize, I'm a little bit rusty today. I've been off with a cold over the last few days, so I'm just trying to get back up to speed here. We also have a rent collection tool. So the same way that you'd pay, say, a utility bill through a pre-authorized debit or a payment through your checking account, we offer that the same way to collect your rent from your tenants. And lastly, for some of the provinces, I know this is kind of a huge one as well. We have a rent guarantee program. So, folks, for you that are in BC and Ontario with some rent controls in place, or where the current legislation and the time to get a hearing is on that longer side. I know folks, unfortunately, in Ontario, are dealing with up to 8-month wait to get their hearing. This is a product that might be of your interest. And essentially, it's kind of like insurance. We'll guarantee that rent up to $60,000 for the first 12 months, protection up to $10,000, and then we'll cover legal fees up to $1,500 as well. Okay, so let's hop right into our SingleKey tenant screen report. What I'll kind of just give a bit of an overview of how the screen process should work, or how I would recommend doing it. I mean, again, this is just one way to do it. There's more than one way to do it, but it's probably will give a good set of context for the folks that haven't done it before. So when you go and you're going through the screening process, you really have two things that you need to kind of figure out. One, the easier side is the numbers game, and that's the credit report. The credit report will very kind of black and white help you make an accurate assessment if this person can afford the rent in your property. That's kind of the easy side. The little bit more difficult side about screening tenants, especially we're talking for long-term rentals here, is you're entering into a long-term relationship. And so there's a bit of the personality side of the game. You have to figure out is if this person is an easy person for you to work with. If you pick someone that makes your skin crawl and you're answering that phone and you're always dreading that phone call from your tenant, it's not going to be a very good experience, and chances are it probably won't help you last long in this game of operating rental properties and investment properties. So that part is more of kind of an interview process, and I can give some tips along the way to help you figure out a tenant that's a good fit for you through the screening process. But what we'll do is we'll open up our new tenant report that we just came out with here in the last month or so, and we'll go through it. And I'll explain a bunch of the different data points in the report. And feel free to ask questions along the way. And yeah, this is kind of a really a show and tell, and to just ensure that you guys have a really good understanding of the report, because there is a ton of information on it as well. Yeah, so perfect. So first question, do we get a copy of the recording of the session? Absolutely. It will be shared in an email on a follow-up after the session. Awesome. And I see most people we're watching from 3 provinces. We have someone from Quebec. That's awesome. John, welcome. But most of the people seem to be from Ontario, BC, and Alberta. So I'll try to speak to the nuances of the difference between the provinces, as we're governed by the RTA, Residential Tenancy Act, at each different, it's different at each province. Okay, so let's bring this on. Okay, so this is our new credit report. And when you get to this stage, this is basically where you've already had a tenant come through and they've viewed your property. The tenant has done the viewing. They go, great, I like it, MacKenzie, I want to rent from you. What is the next step? The way our service works is you'll have a link that you've created on your SingleKey account, and that link will be associated to a rental property and the rent that you specify. And why is that important? Is we have these metrics at the top, rent to income ratio, and by you telling us how much rent you're going to charge of that property, we'll help you understand the rent to income ratio based on the answers that the tenant provides us in the application. So you've done the viewing, the tenant goes, great, I want to rent from you. You either email or text them this link. This link is onto an online application the tenant will go and fill out. Typical tenant takes around 10 to 15 minutes, depending if they've got all the information on hand. It can be quicker as well if they do have that information available. And from the moment they hit send, within 5 minutes, you guys will have this comprehensive report in your inbox. What else we can kind of throw? So we'll just kind of start going through the information. In this first section here, this is called our application summary. We have basically, which is kind of what I'm excited about too. This is new. The occupants and the pets, we've added that in because before our original report was based on a single application or a single applicant, but we understand that when someone comes around, when a party comes to rent or apply to rent for your property, it could be a single person, it could be a couple, it could be a family, it could be a number of roommates. And obviously it's important to you to understand how many people will be renting your property, because that would then gauge a level of wear and tear that you can take that in consideration. So knowing that full party up front definitely helps. We have we've differentiated as well personal income from household income. And why that is important is obviously if you've got a party of say 3 roommates renting from you or a couple, it's going to be their total combined income that you're going to want to base your rent to income ratio off of, which is super important. And considering the inflation and the environment we've seen now over the last year and a half to 2 years, in some of our hotspots across the country, talking about the Vancouvers and the Torontos, a lot of people trying to rent in those areas are going to probably have a rent to income ratio closer to 50%, just unfortunately the way things are right now. So something to take in mind when you're going through this process. If you're in one of those higher rents areas, it might be difficult to get a rent to income ratio below or at that typical target, which I'd say the industry standard was around 30 to 35%. So something to keep in mind as well. So anyways, this little summary area basically will probably give you a quick highlights of what areas you should focus in on a little bit more if there's warnings that have come up. So if they failed the ID verification, you're going to want to scroll down that section and see why. If there's a ton of late payments, we can dive into that as well. So then we have a credit overview as well. So this section will show you the credit score. One key takeaway with the credit score is a credit score is simply a snapshot in time. It's an instant moment in time. It doesn't really encompass ongoing track record. I mean, it's certainly a great start, but where I want to provide a word of caution is don't solely make a judgment on a tenant based on their credit score. You can have tenants who are going through life events, say divorce or job loss, where they might have a damaged credit score based on circumstances outside of their control. And we'll dive in a little bit more on the numbers and what that looks like to help make a kind of a judgment on if this is someone's bad habits have indicated a lower credit score, or if perhaps there's something else going on. And I guess the last part to wrap up on that point as well, why this is important, is you might have a diamond in the rough, a tenant with a bruised credit score that will make for a great tenant. So, especially if someone is doesn't have the greatest credit score and you've accepted them, and again, it's due to circumstances outside their control, you're going to probably have someone very thankful who will make for a great long term tenant. So we do we work with a third party to provide a bunch of online searches. This is what our background overview section is based on. One word of caution with this, like this is great. If you find any hits, I definitely dig into them further. If this comes back squeaky clean and it's all cleared, doesn't mean that we've captured everything. And what I mean by that, not all online databases are available. So, for example, if you're looking for judgments from the LTB out in Ontario or RTDRS here in Alberta or the equivalent out in BC, I know for Alberta and Ontario for a fact, they don't publish those data online readily available. So, since that data isn't available online, we don't have a way or a tool to pull that into a report at this current time. So that could mean in the sense that you could see a perfectly clean check on this section, and yet they might have actually a judgment gone through the LTB. So quickly as we're going forward here, so we do gather some basic information, their rental history. So what you see here in this case here, we have this rental history coming through, and we also have a landlord reference. When the tenant goes and fills out the report, they do provide the current or the reference, or sorry, the current or the previous landlord. They do if they provide their email, we'll actually send out an automated emailer to that email address. Now, keep in mind if this tenant is used a friend or a buddy to say spoof a reference, this might come back squeaky clean and say, "Oh, 5 stars and perfect." If it comes back perfect, I'd say take it with a grain of salt, knowing that that's a possibility. However, if it comes back and it's not perfect and someone's being honest, saying, the tenant was okay, the unit was a little bit dirty, rent was mostly paid on time, or whatever that story is, then you're more likely to have a truthful response. And then I would take that into consideration. I mean, our goal here at SingleKey is to provide you, the homeowner or the landlord, as much information as possible, as many data points as possible to make the most informed decision when you select your next tenant. All right, so going through. Oh, yeah, and this is something super cool. I'm really excited about. So, kind of a pro tip as well is when you get your application, you're going to have those current and previous addresses listed on the rental history. When we would go and pull the credit report, we can see listed addresses or reported addresses inside the Equifax report. And those addresses appear because of online or of bills open up in the tenant's name. So they might have a Rogers cell phone or a Telus internet plan, home internet, and those addresses on those services are what shows up in Equifax. Now, if we get a cross-reference match from Equifax to the information provided by the tenant on the application, then you have a lot higher degree of confidence that information being provided by the tenant is in fact true, which is really cool. So what we've done now, we've put a bit of uh, I guess a bit of a notification or a trigger here to say, hey, we noticed this address reported by the tenant on the application also matches one of the reported addresses on the Equifax credit report. And that's a nice cross reference to have to ensure that you've got a point of truth that you're working with. And that's really kind of focusing on the online tenant screen. And I try not to riff too much here, but I get pretty excited about this stuff because there's so much more data and information available online these days. Part of your job going through it and validating all the information provided to you is trying to cross-reference information provided by the tenant with other sources of truth or third-party information online to give you that high degree of confidence that the information is truthful and not false. And same thing here. So just as I mentioned before, how we try to cross-reference the previous addresses with what's provided in the Equifax report, we do the same thing as well with the employment. Now, just from my personal experience, I've seen Equifax not provide the best quality of employment information for me personally. So I call this a bonus if you get the cross reference here. But again, at the end of the day, you're going to want to double check all these data points yourself individually to do your own due diligence. I mean, we're trying to speed up the process, but it always is a good habit to do your own due diligence. Okay, so let's keep going through here. Again, here we're talking about the personal income and the household income. So when we talk about personal income, that's based on this applicant. There is one primary or main applicant per report. And then if they're, let's say there are a couple applying, that's this total income that they're providing. And I would say as a best practice, you're going to want to run a credit report on every adult applying on that property, and you'll want to actually set up your leases that have every adult as a tenant on your lease. And the reason for that is essentially it comes back to the saying, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Hopefully you never need this, but worst case, if you've got three adults on your lease and something goes awry and there's rent arrears or there's damages, you've got now three more bank accounts to go after, as opposed to only having one individual on your lease. We do allow the ability for tenants to upload additional supporting documentation. That could be pay stubs, that could be T4s, that could be letters of employment. All that information is collected right here. So again, we're trying to provide a tool to give you guys all the information you need to make that informed decision. Okay, do gotta speed it up here because I am going a little bit the slower slide. There's a bunch of information, and then hopefully just save you guys some time at the end for some Q&A here. Uh, oh, this is really exciting too. So we now have a cosign guarantor or a cosigner flow. So if you've got, say, you're renting to someone that's new to the country, or perhaps a student that, or sorry, it's a young kid that's now out of high school, they're 18, they're going into university, they have no credit score. You have the ability to add a cosigner. And so previously, what people were doing was they'd run them through the same tenant screen process on SingleKey that a tenant would go through. But we've actually now streamlined that process and made it more efficient. And what I mean by that is before, if they're going through the process, we might be asking if they have pets. Well, pets aren't really relevant on a cosigner because they're not living at the property in hand. They're just taking the same liability and co-sign with the tenant in question. So we've streamlined that flow, and you have an option to mark someone as a guarantor on the sign up, so they get asked less questions. And what that means is the less questions, the less friction that we have in our experience or on that application flow, meaning you're going to have a higher chance of getting more complete applications and then uh, more applications to make an informed decision off of, which is always good. We've added a whole pet profile section now, which is I'm really excited about. So we have the type of cat, dog, cat, other, the breed, the size, the sex, the age, whether it's been fixed or not, and then opportunity to add in photos as well. If you've got parking requirements at your rental property, perhaps it's a condo or an apartment, you can also collect vehicle information as well. We have a standard set of questions here that we ask. This is a demo, or this is a prototype right now, so you'll see this kind of information you won't see on the actual final product. And then we have a free text field as well, so a personal message from the tenant, an opportunity for the tenant to present themselves, why they're a better choice over your other applicants, or what makes them unique, which is always great to have. Again, we have an opportunity to collect a bunch of information from the tenant. One of my favorite things is government issued ID. You need to know who you're renting to. It makes it quite difficult if you're trying to go after someone for arrears and you don't even know who the person is that's been rented from you. So very, very key part of the screening process is to verify the tenant is who they say they are. Now, this is something cool that we've added in, a applicant consent form. And essentially what this means is you guys, when you export this, that you can export this whole report as a PDF. If you're going and as you do your due diligence and you're checking previous landlords or employment for references, and let's say one of the previous one of the previous landlords was a property management company, they're going to expect that they're going to want to see written consent from you that you've got the right to pull this information. You can export this now. This consent's automatically collected on our application process, and you can take this report, export it, and send it over to the property management company while to do your proper landlord reference. Okay. Credit score. So this is a really good breakdown. We'll tell you where the credit score is. In this example, it's 715, and we'll show you on the scale. So it kind of gives you an idea of where they sit across the country. Um, just for some additional context, from our research, we see that tenants typically have a lower credit score than the rest of Canadians that own property, and that delta is about 40 points. So just because if they're renting long term and they don't have as many assets, does contribute to a little bit of a lower credit score. So something to keep in mind. Now, all this information here is coming from Equifax. Oh, another really exciting thing too is we do have TransUnion coming in the new year. So we're going to actually be the first in the country to have dual credit reporting agencies. Super exciting. What that means from your perspective is most businesses have a choice of who they're going to report credit information to. I would probably say the majority do report to both, so Equifax and TransUnion. But there are cases out there where some companies only choose to report to one credit bureau. Why? I have no idea. That's to each company's own discretion. So there is some data points where might be only in Equifax or might be only in TransUnion. Uh, but for the vast majority, we see it's pretty consistent across both. Okay, so we've got yeah. So here's the reported addresses. So on our previous report, and I still recommend doing this as well. You're going to want to manually check these addresses from the addresses up in your application. Again, if you're able to get a cross reference, that's a great bonus that you now know that you've got a strong point of data or um, a good what do you call it? Yeah, strong data point or a moment of truth. That's what I'm trying to go with. Okay, so then now we've got some debt overview. This is super important. So this is going to tell you their total debt owing. I wouldn't be alarmed if this is a high number. If they do say have a mortgage, let's say they're forced to move and they're renting their house in their current city and they're going to rent in the new place that they're moving to. Um, so something to keep in mind. It's probably, and we do give, we'll do allow you, we'll do, sorry, excuse me. We will allow you to break this down and see where the debt sources come from. And of course, there's different kind of values to that debt, right? So we've got revolving credit, so lines of credit and credit cards. There's that debt, and we'll give you the utilization rate. So if you see this is all maxed out, that would be definitely a red flag, a concern because they're having trouble managing it. And we also have these things called late buckets. So this is where if a person's let a bill go past the due date, let's say, uh, so if the I'm going to articulate. So is if they have let's say they have a bill due in the first of the month and they don't pay it within the first 30 days and they let go to the elapse into the following month, you'll fall into this first checkbox called 30 days. If they have a late bill go past 30 days and fall to 60 to 90 days, it's going to have a check mark here. And if they've let a bill go 3 days overdue, or sorry, 3 days, 3 months overdue, you're going to fall or later, you're going to fall in this bucket. And pretty much at this point after that is where it goes to collections. So if you're seeing a bunch of check marks across the board here in different areas, that's probably more so of an indicator that they are not a good steward of their personal finances. Now, if you've had someone going through a life event, let's say job divorce or sorry, divorce or job loss, man, I mix my words today. You might see a bunch of late check boxes in, say, just in the 30 days, or maybe a bunch that have gone to 30. You're going to want to dig into that further and understand why that's happening. What is the source of those leads? Again, and if it is a part of a root cause that's out of their control, then you might have a dime in the rough here where you've got a good tenant that would be um, where you might have a good financially responsible tenant, but because of something out of their control that they've gone through and they've got a bruised credit score. We've also color coded all the individual trade lines. So a trade line is really like every kind of financial product they've gotten that has a liability. So like a credit score, line of credit, student loans, car loans, mortgages, all that type of stuff will fall in here. And we'll let you know whether it's in arrears, which is red, it's overdue a bit, which is yellow. Sorry, arrears is not red means it's gone to collection. It's been overdue way too long. This is where if it's yellow, it'll be one of those late buckets we just talked about, 30, 60, and 90. Or is paid and up to date current, then it's in green, which is also what you want to see. So really, we give you guys the like I said, the same information that banks use before they lend out on mortgages. You're getting the same tools and data sets to make that same kind of informed decision. We do have a bunch of other information, bankruptcies, collections. So I'll obviously go through here. So if there's anything that's suspicious or raises a concern, dig into it further with that prospective tenant. Lots of different items here. And then we do a background check as well. I mentioned it kind of earlier at the top of in the summary screen. And we do an online search to find similar online profiles. So whether it be Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, whatever it might be. It is base match on the name. So if that person does have more of a common name, there is an opportunity for a false positive, or we will find not the right account. Your job is still to go through each of these individual profiles to ensure that this is the person in question. If there's any published information or arrests out there that on say anything that's Googly searchable, they'll be pulled into here. So the RCMP, for example, will post some information publicly on arrest warrants. That's what will get pulled into here. If someone's gone through and say has been charged or has a criminal record, it may not always be shown up in here. Again, that goes back to not all that information is available in online in a form that we can search with our automations in the background or what I'm trying to say, APIs. We don't have it. Yeah, sorry. We don't have APIs where into all of the online databases, and that's really at the discretion of at the government that has that information. Hopefully, we get there one day. We'd love to see that. And this is my favorite part that we've added to the new report. So previously, we just allow you guys to capture a photo of the government issued ID. And I've been in situations where I've done a viewing at one of my rental properties. 4 or 5 days later, I get the SingleKey report, and I'm looking at an ID, and I'm like, and the ID is probably 4 or 5 or because I think they can be up to 10 years before they have to be renewed, at least for the passports. And I'm looking at this ID. I'm like, is this the same person I saw 4 days ago? And I'm scratching my head. So what we've now added in, which I'm really excited for, is we do a selfie comparison online automatically for you. So we've found a third-party tool. And if you've signed up for our service already and have had to create a landlord account, you would have gone through the same process because we have to verify every landlord account before they get access to the credit scores, where we'll actually they have to take a selfie, take a picture of their driver's license, and they take a third picture of them holding it together. And we'll give you our confidence rating that this person is in fact the person in the ID. So it's really good for remote landlords. If you have boots on the ground, people doing your viewings for you, you still get a really good documentation trail to start that tenancy off with. Okay, kind of ripped through that pretty quickly here. Now's a good time. I'm going to start going through the questions here. So, Karen, if you want to help me, which is our first question to answer? Okay. And is it possible to access a list of blacklisted tenants who have a poor track record of making timely rental payments? So, it's a good question. If there's Facebook groups out there that have done a similar thing that you're talking about, and it is technically illegal, and it's illegal for the reason that there's no proper checks and balances when a private group is maintaining this list. There are some services out there, and this is why it's also, I think, really super important to report any rent arrears and go through the legal process in your province, because that's what gets captured in our credit score. So essentially, the credit score portion is that kind of de facto bad tenant list if people are reporting it. Now, on top of that, there is typically a lower tribunal in each province. So again, it's the LTB in Ontario, RTDRS here in Alberta. They also have their own databases. Again, today they're not available online. Also, we'd be happy to pull those into a report. But those are optional areas that you can do searches at too. I know in Alberta, for example, to do a record search, it is kind of a bit time consuming. I think it's typically between 3 to 5 business days. So it's not instantaneous. And if you're in a tough market, perhaps where there's not a lot of great tenants, or really just in general, high quality tenants typically go really fast. You might not always have time to be able to pull that credit report. So, but things to keep in mind. Okay, next one. How does a job loss affect a credit score? I can't speak to the context of an exact hit on the credit score, but you're going to see it definitely being lower. Uh, by how many points? I mean, that's very subjective, and there's a lot more variables at play that will kind of color that credit score. But you'll see probably what you'll see at a job loss. Well, one is when you confirm that they are actively employed at that time by collecting a letter of employment, which is again can be done in our report. And then two is seeing if they have any recent late payments in their payment history. Sarah, how do you find out if they have a judgment with the LTB? Is that not possible? Or LBT? Yeah, so I can speak from a Alberta perspective. You're able to go down to any of our local courthouses in any of the major cities, Calgary, Red Deer, and Edmonton. And actually, there is an online portal too with Service Alberta to do searches. I know in Ontario, the LTB, there is an option to search on Canley. Now, Canley isn't complete by any means. I think there's been a big push for them to push more of the results in there. The best thing too is to call the previous landlord references. I think that's why it's so important. And keep in mind, and anyone that's experienced will know this, the current landlord may be biased if they're in a position where they're trying to get rid of an undesirable tenant. They may unfortunately falsely give you a shining recommendation in the hopes that this tenant moves on. So really, when you're doing your background checks and your reference checks, it's that it's that landlord that has no skin in the game. That's the second or the third rental history where you want to hopefully get a hold of and have that question. And when you're doing that screening call as well, you don't really want to advertise when you first call that person that you're calling as a landlord to do a reference check, because if that's a buddy that's been queued up to give a fake reference, you're just basically you're basically giving them the heads up to start lying to you on the phone. So usually what I do is I do two things. One, I start the phone call asking about any current rentals. If the person stumbles and is confused why you're calling them, you probably have a fake reference. If they answer that fine and say, well, no, I don't have any current rentals available, then you've in fact probably have gotten to a landlord. And then you should start asking questions about the details of that current application. You know, when did that person rent from? How much was the rent? Did they pay utilities? Was pets allowed? All those kind of nuances of that previous tenancy. And I would ask them in two ways. You can ask the questions open ended, and hopefully that person forces that person to answer you, and you're not kind of leading them with questioning. Or two is you change the details. You might say instead of the lease starting on January 1st, you say, "Oh, thanks, Sean, for answering the phone. Mike said he rented from you from March 1st of 2020 to whatever date." And you've changed the facts. And if they don't catch you and correct you, then you might have someone again who's posing as a fake rental or a fake reference. All right, George. Should we report our experience with a tenant for future landlords? Absolutely. I mean, I really do believe this is kind of like karma, but more so, if you take the onus on you to report them to wherever your provincial authority is for again LTB or RTRS, we're working hard to here at SingleKey to be able to tie these numbers into the credit score, and by reporting these arrears, it gives the ability to warn the next prospective landlord when they're making a judgment on a new tenant application. So I highly recommend doing it. Okay, next question here. In the current scenario, where we have a pretty high listing, we have pretty high listings in the market that could this be added verification or barrier? Your current sorry, I'm trying to understand this question, Jazzeep. So I'm assuming you're in a high demand market with low vacancy. So you've got, you've been in the driver's seat with a lot of applications coming in. Oh, no, pretty high listen. So sorry, that would be the opposite. So let's say, yeah, this is a good question. So, if I understand Jasdeep correctly, they're in a market where there's tons of vacancy right now and not a lot of tenants applying. Yes, so you're right. The more questions that we add or friction into the application process, the less completed applications, less applications you'll receive, and of course, less applications to make a decision with isn't ideal, especially if you only got one or two applications. In our settings, you can actually pick and choose what fields you want to be a mandatory or a requirement and force that tenant to complete on the application. So in this case, if you're in a challenging market where you're competing against other landlords, it would be in your interest to actually make a lot of those fields optional. Perhaps make the ID optional. Perhaps make adding proof of employment optional. You can still collect this information later. Again, we just bring it into our process. Awesome. By the way, we've got someone from Texas. I just saw that. Super cool. But yeah, you can pick and choose what fields. So then, if you're in a high demand environment where you've got lots of applications coming in, you should be making all those fields mandatory because now you've got more applications coming in that are completed with more information, giving you opportunity to make the best decision possible. Okay, Trevor, on the co-signers, how much on the hook are they if the main tenant defaults? Do you have access to withdraw from the accounts in this case? So what's key here is we've streamlined the co-signer process to make it really easy for them to complete the application as well. However, this piece that you're talking about is contingent on how you structure your lease. Again, the best practices is you should have every adult or age of majority person living at that property as a tenant on your lease. And that's where it gives you the legal right to go after them for arrears. And then talk about withdrawing from their accounts. Again, that would be on your provincial or state regulation and how to do that. Okay, Larry, will the report show the two scores or blended score? No. So the credit score would be on the main applicant for that application. And let me correct that. There is only one applicant per credit score, but we have the ability to join two credit reports together or two applications. So you might have, let's say, Jane and John applying on your property. Jane and John will indicate that they're actually a co-applicant, and we'll link those two applications together in the back end. And then at the time where both of them have completed the report, you'll see that combined household income ratio be updated. And just for context here, because in reality, Jane might finish her application today, and John might finish their application on Thursday or Friday, and you can get the information as it comes in. So you might actually see in the report that the John's or sorry, Jane's income and Jane's household income might be the same until John has put his application in, and then we'll update that household income to match whatever John has. So the individual income is based on whichever applicant is the reports is on, and then as all the information comes in, we'll in real time update the household income ratio to correspond whatever the latest numbers are. How is the criminal information verified? Right. So again, it's an online record search based on what information is available online. Not all criminal record information is accessible online. It's all publicly available, but that's the devil in the details. From our perspective, the bill is tied in real time through an API or automatically online. Not all information is available. So we'll scan any media releases or news releases on arrest warrants or that information. That information will get captured into a report. But this comes back to what I was trying to say at the beginning. If you come back and the online search comes back squeaky clean, it does not mean there's still not something out there. And where it's really important to verify that locally, either you can either do an additional a police what do you call it a criminal check with your at your local police station, or doing a search with the local rental board in your province or state. Okay, wait. My report looks different than what is presented here. No, oh, okay, no idea why. So wait for sure. What I just presented today is a brand new report that it's been released in the last month. It's got more data points than our old report. So if you've got the old format one, that one is being retired as of this year. So that would be the differences. It still does contain a lot of the same information in addition to what we've added to it. But that's why you're seeing the differences there. But back to saying cross-referencing the stated rental addresses on the application to what's found on the credit report, you can still do those same kind of best practices. Okay, Victor, how do we report a late payment or none or any other? Right. So with our rent collection tool, we do allow the ability, and right now it's only available in Canada, so we don't have that yet available in the States. It is coming. But the report is, if we facilitate collecting rent on your behalf and doing a pre-authorized deposit into your account, we see both sides of the transaction. That information actually is being reported to Equifax. We're doing something that's called batch reporting. So it's not as instant as reporting on an ongoing monthly basis, but that information does get captured. It just takes a lot longer for it to get into the Equifax ecosystem. And yeah, so something we're working with Equifax to bring that online. And did you say judgments from the LTB won't show up in this credit report? Yeah, if it's publicly available online, we have a way to search and pick up. We'll collect it. But from my understanding, and for the LTB side, is most of their results are trying to get pushed into Canly. And right now, I don't think they have provided, like, we don't, well, I can tell you right now, we don't have a direct way to pull their results. So that is still an area you'd have to search on. I know, which is quite unfortunate. And it's the same struggle that we have here in Alberta as well. And I would probably assume it's something similar in BC. Well, you have French rental forms and reports. So the report does work already in Quebec. It's not in French. You know what? Let me take that away, John. That's a good question. I don't believe it's in French. It's probably in available as an English only version, but that's something that we should definitely have. So let me take that away with my team, and we can follow up with you after the webinar and give you the answers for that. Do you search open room? Good question. It's something that we're are currently looking at. So for the folks that don't know, open room was started by a few landlords out in Ontario after a very poor experience with the previous tenant, and they're essentially creating an online database of hearing results. My only caution with this, like, I think it's great. I think if you have it, go and search it. They have opened it up to the rest of Canada, but I think that they're accepting some forms that haven't been fully vetted, that haven't been finalized with a judgment. And I just want to be cautious. Don't be in a position, especially if you're submitting information to open source or open room, is you want to make sure you're submitting fully tried and tested cases that have received a judgment and they're are kind of actually completed. Because right now, I think we're accepting some applications that weren't fully gone through the legal process yet. And so, kind of similar to a tax return, anyone can submit a T1, or anyone can create their own T1. But what's really important is the judgment that comes back from this CRA, which is that notice of assessment. So same situation here. You want to get that judgment on the hearing to know that it's actually gone through a judge or a tenancy dispute officer or whatever tribunal process it is there to ensure that there's a fair judgment being made. How does retirement impact your credit score? That is a great question, Elaine. I would say long as they've got a pension and they've got money and it comes back to them paying their bills on time. And the other big thing too is debt utilization. My assumption for most people in the retirement have little to no debt at all. So if you see very low debts on it, you're going to probably see still very high credit score. The way the credit score is constructed as well is it's going to take in consideration these different types of life scenarios to try to come to um, a balanced approach on the actual score or the result. But really, like this is why I emphasize so importantly to get past the credit score. Like, well, it's great for a quick check. You really want to see how their finances are constructed. Do they have high debts, low debts? Are they paying all the bills on time? Was there a bunch of late payments in a very short timeline? Could that be due to an event outside their control? Again, job loss or divorce. This is why it's more important to actually go through the credit report or the credit report, yeah, in great detail, as opposed to just making a high level judgment on, say, the credit score number. Okay, so Michelle's asking. Oh, yeah, good question. So asking about if we've got credit checks for tenants outside Canada, so new Canadians, we do. It's coming in. There's an international check. This will be available stateside as well, where you can check people outside of North America. I think we can check up to 200 and don't quote me on this, but it's 100 to 200 plus countries around the world. It's a third party provider that we're working with right now. It will be coming probably, honestly, end of Q1 would be where I think we're targeting that right now. So something to watch for. Raymond, there must have been thousands who have applied through SingleKey. Is there a way to review previous reports or compare a current report to a previous one? Interesting. Um, Probably because of privacy, you can only collect information that you have a legitimate business justification for. So in this case, as homeowners and landlords, you do have the right to verify that they're financially sound to verify or to rent from you. Unfortunately, you can only look at the information um, at the time of that application when you're filling the vacancy. There wouldn't be a reason to go back and pull and look at an old credit score from like 2 years ago. It has to be at that point in time. But really, you're going to get an updated credit score when you pull it for vacancy, and that's going to have a lot of the historical information. So something I didn't really quite share here. Let me see if quickly go to when we do our credit section for you. So look, for example, here. So here's a Capital One, a Costco credit card. We've got 96 months of history. So I mean, what is 96? Isn't that like so 5 is 48? There's like 7 years of history right here. So depending on how long they've been building their credit score, you're going to get varying degrees of history on each of the trade lines that they have. You're going to essentially see that same information that you're looking for, Raymond, as opposed to trying to pull another credit score because the credit report is the word inclusive. It's cumulative. It adds in all that credit history to date. Can SingleKey help evict a bad tenant? If yes, then how? Yeah. So if you're going through our rent guarantee program, and we guarantee the rent with you, if we have to go through the worst case scenario and do attend eviction, we're motivated just as much as you because the rent guarantee is it's kind of like insurance. You guys pay. There's a monthly premium of 5% of the monthly rent, and if that tenant is defaulting, well, we're going to start paying you out on our policy through our underwriter, and it's going to start costing us money too. So we're motivated just as much as you to go through the eviction process. We have relationships with eviction specialists or paralegals in every province, depending on what they're called. So we have them in Alberta, BC, Ontario, actually really across the board. You have to go through that process. We'll be beside you. We'll either do it for you if you would prefer that, or if you prefer to take control, and we'll support you. Either way, we'll work side by side with you to do the eviction process if you're on the rent guarantee program. Robin, when tenants fill out the application, the report will be sent to the landlord email. Can the tenants resend this report to a different landlord from your end so they don't have to pay twice? Yeah, this is a great question. So we're actually very close to this. So coming out next year as well, we're going to allow so today all the services that we have are initiated by you, the homeowner or the landlord, meaning you have to start the process to use one of our services. Tomorrow, coming in the new year, we're really excited that tenants can actually go out and purchase their own credit report, and then they can show up at your viewing when they've come out to view one of your properties and come in hand and present you the credit report. And that credit report, which is actually, let me show this to you. This is a really cool feature that we've got. Um, so we have this QR code. So let's say the tenant goes, prints off this report. It's a PDF. We all know that PDFs or anything can be altered quite easily online these days, very quickly. So if you get a printed or a report handed directly to you from the tenant, it's always great. But it comes back to that. This is very important. It's trust but verify. So anything that comes directly from the tenant, you need to go an extra level of due diligence and verification to ensure that information is legit. And and here's a really good example. If someone's struggling to find a property right now, they've probably done 20, 30, 40 applications, they're not getting anywhere. They're going to start feeling really desperate, especially if they're coming up to a deadline where they have to move out. They're going to be motivated to perhaps fluff, change or maybe even just slightly alter some of the information to look in a better light and understandably slow. So with us knowing that, it's still our job and our responsibility to fact check all the information provided. So what we've done here is Tenant has given you a printed off SingleKey score that they've ordered themselves. You can scan this QR code, sign in to your SingleKey account or create a new account if you're brand new, and get access to the same report directly from SingleKey. So now what we've done for you is given you the ability to ensure all that information is legit because now it's coming from a trusted third-party source, which is us, SingleKey, and not directly from the tenant. But we've given the tenant the ability to then ensure that their credit score is only being inquired on once. And this actually raises to me to a really good point where um, the common objection I hear is, "Oh, I don't want my credit score damaged or hurt." So a lot of people ask, "Is the single key credit check a hard or a soft check?" And in fact, it's that's not really the right construct to answer the question in. It depends, and what I mean by that is, yes, there will be a under the inquiry section, which I wonder if I can find that somewhere. Mhm. Okay. Well, it does live somewhere on here, but we'll tell you the number of credit checks inquiries over a period of time. Oh, here it is, local inquiries. Yeah, 4. So here we go. So all these different places. So you might see one in here that says customer name will say single key. Now, um, because we don't check with a financial value, our checks don't have a lot of weight to them. So, for example, if a tenant goes and gets a $20,000 credit check for a car loan, that has a weight of $20,000, and if they keep doing that repeatedly, that can impact their credit score. Whereas a check from SingleKey that has 0 monetary value associated with a credit check, yes, it does show up. You'll see SingleKey in here, but there's no financial, value or weight to that credit check. So it's not looked in the same way. It does not have the same impact as one with a hard, financial dollar value associated to the check. Blending credit scores. So if we have a couple of roommates who will we have to send a separate report to each person? So double price. Yeah, it is. At this point in time, because we have to pull an individual credit check from Equifax each time, or TransUnion come in the future, you are paying on a per application basis. So what I really suggest doing is getting a very good short list done. So you've gone through on your initial contact. You should have a set of questions on how to screen that tenant over the phone. It's usually like, do the basic logistics when you're moving, how long do you need, how many bedrooms, size and number of people looking to rent out. But then you would be asking other questions as well, like have you given proper notice to your current landlord? Do you know your credit score? Do you have any issues with doing a background or credit check? That's part of our due diligence process. And if you go through all that information, and then so it's kind of like a light application is really the best way to put it. It's not a full application where you're collecting like their SIN number or driver's license number, and we're not pulling an Equifax credit score, because you shouldn't be doing that for someone just to view a property. I think that's just it's simply it's unethical and it's invasive. But that short list should be done at the very end. So ideally, you're getting to a place where if you've gotten 20, 30, 50 applicants coming in, or inquiries, you've perhaps got 10 applications. Off 10 applications, and maybe you've shortlisted the top 3 or 4. If or maybe you got 2 couples applying, it might be 4 applications. That's the best way to do it. Will there be a list of what countries you all have information from? Yeah. So when we have that new provider coming in the new year with foreign credit checks, I haven't actually seen what that information looks like, but it's a third party that ties into it. It will, yeah, actually, it will. No, sorry, it will indicate what country that information is coming from, which should probably match where that person's from, anyways. If they're reporting they used to live in Great Britain, or if it's in India, or wherever they might be coming from. Um, so you don't pull judgments from county. No, we don't. There isn't a direct way to do it today. If we could, we definitely would. It's something that we're looking at, perhaps an option to manually upload that information, but there isn't a tool today. They don't have an API or an interface for us to do it with software on the back end. Okay, I think that's it. If we haven't answered everyone's question, we're going to follow up with a let me get into it here. We'll follow up with a link to a replay to the webinar, a link to ask more questions, and please, please, please ask questions. That is our opportunity to ensure that we're providing you guys the best information as possible, and opportunities to always improve a report. I mean, it really, when it comes to this business, you can have the perfect rental property, but if you don't put the right tenant in, they're not paying your rent and you're not making any money. So this is the most crucial step you can do as a homeowner or landlord, is your due diligence on the front end by finding the best tenant possible. And that's really our job here at SingleKey, is to give you those tools to make that most informed decision. So with that, we're going to end the webinar. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Take care. And if we don't talk to you guys again, season's greetings and enjoy your holidays.